Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about a cartoon series that I watched when I was just a little kid growing up in the 90s, and that's James Bond Jr. I forgot all about this cartoon, and I actually rethought about it when I was making my review for Action Man, because I was saying how like that's basically just a James Bond type ripoff and everything. And then I started thinking about James Bond. Then I started thinking about James Bond Jr. I'm all like, oh yeah, I remember there used to be a cartoon called that. And you'll never hear nobody talk about it no more. And so like I thought, okay, maybe I'll do it as like one of those forgotten cartoon things like I do on this channel all the time. And so yeah, I remember back when I did used to watch this. This was the first James Bond anything I had ever watched because I never watched none of the movies. In fact, the first movie I watched was when I was in college, and it was the Pierce Brosnan, his last James Bond movie. And I thought it was a pretty good movie, a little corny, but it was pretty cool with all the action and stuff. And then, because when I was in college, I saw the very first Daniel Craig one, and I fell in love with the James Bond like character and stuff because like I loved how they did Daniel Craig's character in his movies. They were more realistic and stuff in the beginning. Towards like the third one, I started getting a little bit into the older stuff, but still in a modern day setting. I love his three Bond movies. I don't like the fourth. I'm hoping to God the fifth and final one would be good. But who knows? That's supposed to come out soon, but it's been delayed because of the you know what. But yeah, James Bond is based off of Ian Fleming and his novels from back in the day. This actually, the cartoon series came out in 1991. However, it's interesting because this isn't the first James Bond Jr. The very first was in a series of novels back in 1967, and they were called The Adventures of James Bond. What was it? 003 and a half. And that was the first person to ever use the like code name James Bond Jr., which is supposed to be his nephew, which makes no sense because James has no brother or sister because he is an orphan. So it never made sense as to how all of a sudden he had siblings and he had a nephew. So like, in the intro, which my God, I love the intro. The intro is boss level like goodness. Like it's such a good high octane intro that really gets you pumped for the series, and it really explains what it's all about. And that's what kind of got me into it when I was a kid. You know, like I'll wake up, I'll turn the TV on, and then early in the morning, it's come on weekdays, and because and it would come on, and so like the intro just got me so pumped and everything. And then I'll watch the shows. And I remember as a kid, I used to love this show. However, now as I watched it as an adult, I kind of realized I watched only the first two episodes, and the first episode's kind of boring. The second one's a little bit more interesting, but kind of boring too. Like it's a dull kind of series. It must have got better as it went on because I remember just loving it. Out of that, I just love the gadgets in the intro. And I just thought it was so cool because he's like this young spy and he's going all around the world and defeating the bad guys, and the bad guys are all like adults. And it was just like really cool and interesting. And so this series, it only lasted sadly for one season, but 65 episodes, half hour, which nowadays you'll never see a cartoon series go 65 mark. They'll like cut off by like 3, 10 or something like that, or 20. And so like it was moderately successful because they had about 6 novels that came from this. They also had about like a couple of comic books and video games based off this on the Nintendo and the Super NES. So it had some like success and everything, and a toy line. And it never came out on DVD. It was out on VHS in the UK and America, but it's never been out on DVD. And it's nowhere to stream except for YouTube. That's been people record on their VHS and upload it to YouTube. So basically what it is just that little young James Bond Jr., who I don't know how he's related to the real James Bond. He picked up his like uncle's mantle and he's just fighting crime all around the world. He's stopping spies, doing the whole espionage thing. he is getting gadgets, and the whole thing with the whole gadgets is just cool. The flying car, the laser watch, like the explosives in the camera. Like it's just fun to see that type of spy type action stuff, and he has characters. Some of them are based off of the movie series. He has his best friend and roommate. His best friend, see, they go to a school called Warfield Academy, and it's basically just like a regular school. And so his best friend is called IQ, but his real name is like Horace IQ Boothroyd and the third. So he's the grandson of Q from the movie series, who builds all of James Bond gadgets and stuff. And this IQ, it's so funny his name is IQ. But he's like extremely smart and he builds all the stuff. He's also one of those side characters had like the B plot. When James say like get captured and stuff, he'll help out and try to save him along with their friend Tracy Milbanks. She is like the friend of like both James and IQ, and she's the love interest of James Bond. But he still has his Bond girls and stuff. And so she will accompany, like say IQ to help Bond out, or she'll accompany James to help him out. She's a really nice character. She's headstrong. She's tough and everything. So it's cool that he has like an assistant that will help him out in the field. But when it comes to James Bond, you just want James Bond to be James Bond by himself. Now there's a dude named Gordo Lideker, who's Felix Lideker, related to him. I forgot how he's related to him, but he's kind of like this blonde dude. He looks like a surfer dude type person. There's a bunch of other characters, but I really don't care for them because I don't like none of the side characters in this show except for Tracy and IQ. I wish they just would have left the other ones out. But so this James Bond, he goes up against an organization called Scum, which is kind of like the Spectre of this show. And Scum, and this stands for Saboteur Criminals United in Mayhem. Oh, that's a name, all right. And the leader of that is Scum Lord. Lord, these James Bond names, I swear. But it's interesting because some characters from the movies actually show up, like in terms of villains. And of course, they're older. There's like an Asian Dr. No now. Sadly, because this was 90s America, they made Dr. No, when they made him Asian, they made him look like a racist stereotype. And they gave him green skin. Similar to what they did to the Mandarin in the 90s Iron Man series. There's Goldfinger and Oddjob. Knick-Knack shows up, and Jaws. So it's interesting. It's cool how they have like a tie-in to like the movies and stuff that correlate with like the show. That's a show that is not like a complete like thing on its own. Now this James Bond is voiced by a legendary voice actor, Corey Burton. He has a terrible British sounding voice in this. I wish they would have got like a real British person, but he's best known playing Brainiac in the Superman cartoon. But like I said, the first episode kind of bored me. The second one was a little bit more interesting. It's basically what Bond, it's called, I think, what is it, Groundcracker or something like that, or Earthshaker or something like that. But it deals with Goldfinger. And so basically he's doing some bad stuff and then James has to stop him. But James ends up getting caught, and then Mary and IQ have to like save him and stuff. Because he was gonna do something to a very famous person. I forget exactly what that he was holding hostage. But yeah, it's basically just what the run-of-the-mill episodes are about. It's about James and his friends going to school, and then James getting like contacted by somebody to say, oh, Scum is doing this around the world and you have to stop them. So then he goes and he tries to stop them. But the only bad part about it is there's no like hand-to-hand action combat. So this was made in the early 90s. And this show has that realistic animation to their faces, that realism type stuff, that surrealism. I miss that look in people's faces because it's kind of like, cartoon characters, like human people, just look so strange now. They look so cartoony and fake. But back then, they used to look realistic, which is a big no-no nowadays. But you know, that's basically what the episodes would be about. And so he would go around the world, you know, doing the whole spy espionage thing, and this and that. The series, like I said, just because the first two episodes kind of boring, I really want to watch the rest that's on YouTube, but I don't have time right now because I'm really busy. But it's like, I noticed the show, it feels like a live action show. So for animation standards, it's kind of dull and boring, especially when you have no like hand-to-hand combat action, you know? So it's kind of like it's kind of like dreary, mopey, kind of like a live action show, and not really fun and high paced as say like an animation thing. Um, However, this is, even though it's the first true official James Bond cartoon, it's not the first attempt. This is actually the second true James Bond cartoon. The first attempt was back in the day, and it was something called like James Bond versus Spectre. But that never, it went from script, but never went to screen. So that would have been interesting to see, but that would have been back in the older days, probably like in the 80s or something like that, or 70s. So that kind of had that terrible animation. So I'm kind of glad they didn't. But yeah, you can check this up on YouTube. It's pretty interesting. You will love the intro to death. I love the intro. It's one of the best intros I've ever seen. It really captures who James Bond is. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.